cybersecurity in India. He will be presenting data, trends on cyber attacks, costs of breaches, and the opportunity to become cyber resilient. Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon. I have your attention. So this short discussion that we would probably take it like since morning you have been listening about security and cybercrime. So what I'll daily talk about what is happening until now in cybersecurity, what is happening now and probably what is going to happen from now, and how we are responding to that and what should we be doing in terms of responding at the individual organization level, individual level to the larger national level as well. So we know that there are a lot of threats that we can talk about, but the ransomware is one of the key things which is probably helping us to realize this threat much better because one is the things which are happening around us with us as well. It's a lot of targets which are now seeing around us, basically a lot of compromises happening. Every week we are seeing a lot of new victims falling from India basically into this. A lot of disruptions are coming in. So ransomware is really awakening us to the threats of the cyber threats and basically what it leads to basically. And the way the behaviors are changing of the ransomware, the kind of data that is getting stolen, kind of advancement that we see in this technology, the way it has been penetrated, way it has been launched, how exactly we are falling prey to this basically. So where we can talk about a lot of things in cybersecurity, but this particular threat is really in a way helping to create that awareness at a various different level basically, right? So and also we are struggling also to how to respond to this, how to prepare for this, how do we make sure that we are there are definitely something we can do at a fundamental level, but there's some ransomware, some of the attacks will be very advanced in nature basically. So on this context of cyber security basically, so what is really happening in cyber security we need to understand, right? So what we are now seeing in terms of cybersecurity is like we know the digitization, we all talk about the footprint that we have been increasing. So this footprint is not only increasing for the larger, bigger organization, but it's also increasing for individual as well. It's increasing for the even some of the sector that we talk about is the banking technology, but it's now also we also see this happening in oil energy sector. A lot of those critical sectors are digitally improving the footprint in digitization perspective, right? The devices and environments are connecting to the network basically. The lot of different devices which is connecting to network, the threats which are very continual, which is persistent, which is targeted, and more importantly, the compliance regulations are becoming now very specific, very stringent, and also they are also becoming very, in a way, putting a lot of obligation on you basically. So there are some penalties which has been imposed now for cybersecurity if you are failing to report incident that had happened at your end basically. So against this context, what is happening? So until now, security was more like all of us come from this background. Security was more like a assessment and assurance, where we try to do security audit, we try to do vulnerability assessment, we try to do risk assessment, penetration testing. So a lot of discussions on how do we make sure that we do the assessment and we know where we stand in terms of security. And this assessment sometimes we will be doing once in a year. Nowadays, people are changing the frequency once in a quarter. But that's where the security which had been until now, the most of the time security has been to this level basically. But what is really happening now, and that's what the enterprise security is now changing, is how do we manage the problem in real-time basis. So security has come to the level of the problem needs to be managed in more real-time basis. So that's why a lot of technology which is coming in cybersecurity. So in 2020-21, there are almost 31 unicorns which happen in cybersecurity space. A lot of investment is flowing in cybersecurity. 1,000 plus different type of technology coming in cybersecurity. And all of them are trying to help you to manage the problem on more real-time basis, basically. So out of millions of things which will go wrong, which will go well, and there'll be one situation where security will get compromised. So finding that one thing on a real-time basis and acting on that is now becoming very important problem and challenge, and that's why enterprise security is becoming very technology game as of now. We see all of the globally big companies as well as a lot of startups coming in this area because a lot of new use cases which are coming in which is compromising security. managing challenge in real time, that becomes very important. But when we say managing challenge in real time basis, what do we say? We say managed security, we say security should be agile, we say that we should be able to identify define the issue in a shortest possible time and take an enforcement action also shortest possible time. We talk about how security we can make it, yeah, yeah.
May I request everybody to please settle down, and can we have the doors closed so that there's no disturbance during the session? Can we please have the doors closed?
Yeah. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you so much.
So when we say the security has come to the level of managing the problem real-time basis to making it more adaptive, making it more integrative, making it more covered. So it should be covering all the possible nuances that could potentially create a problem. Contextualized, it should be more situationally aware, it should be more platformized. So all of the orchestrated, automated, and also it talks about it should be predictive in nature as well. So this is how the entire defense of security is coming in. And on top of it, what is happening? The people are expecting a lot out of security. People are expecting that it should satisfy, it should be able to cover all the things which is happening. So our infrastructure is becoming more complex and heterogeneous, and we are expecting the security should cover each and every part of that. Our infrastructure is becoming more complex. We are expecting the security should take care of the complexity involved as well. Our infrastructure is becoming more diverse. We are expecting security should be taking care of the diversity because every of these equipment, devices, applications are asking something from security. The volume and scale that we are looking at in terms of this country, especially the kind of volume that we are doing digitization, we are expecting security to match to the volume and scale of transactions we are processing in here and other part of the globe as well. We are making security more visible. We are asking more visibility from security because a lot of things are happening at a ground level underneath. What it exactly tells us basically. We are asking security to become more accurate, more disciplined, more productive, and more predictable basically. So these are the new attributes basically which we are expecting from cybersecurity space. And these attributes are now defining the way the enterprise security is being discussed in the context basically. And that's why we see a lot of innovation and entrepreneurship happening in cybersecurity space is because of this. So security nowadays requires a lot of innovation engineering, and that's not only the manage. Until now, security was like just get a solution, implement and manage the solution. But that's not the security nowadays basically. So enterprise security is more now factor of innovation engineering, a lot of effort that needs to be put in terms of understanding how things are going, how things are changing, how should we respond. And that response is increasingly becoming part of what kind of new thinking that you bring to the table basically. So this is how the security, and these are the basically attributes that are becoming very important for the security, and that's why entire game of enterprise security has changed in last 2-3 years quite significantly. And we see a lot of now big bets are being made for security. There is a platformization of security that we talk about. So one platform which is serving millions of the organization, and in that millions of the organization, there are millions, multi-millions of the endpoints, and learning from all of that together and then trying to find at a global level, this particular threat is happening at one part of the globe, probably it could heal other parts of the globe as well. So that is how the global operational security is coming, and that's where the enterprise security ecosystem is going. And when we have to look at a national level, basically, so how do we solve this at an individual organization level and a national level? So that's what basically I would like to conclude with. So we talk about the security then was largely the assurance-driven security. We talk about the security now is mostly the real-time management of the problem in terms of all these attributes that I talked about. But now what is happening is now is more like a response and recovery. The breaches are happening day by day. How do you quickly respond to those breaches is becoming very important part basically. How can you respond timely? How can you recover? How can you make your response and recovery more systematized basically? How can you make it more automated basically? How can you make your security in such a way that you are limiting the damage? How can you bring a lot of multi-dimensional effort to make sure that you're recovering fast basically? How can you make security more engaging in terms of the overall remediation actions are basically most effective actions basically. Because once a ransomware attack happens and your operations are disrupted basically, the things can go wrong, but there could be multiple paths the things can be brought to the original level or recovery level basically. But finding the best out of it is also one of the important part. So it's a becoming big game in terms of the way that you recover from the any compromise which happens basically. And most of the security firm now would be how quickly, how easily, how effectively, how you recover from those kind of attacks is becoming very important part, and that particular part is not now confined to the one organization's individual capability basically. You need entire ecosystem for that. So that ecosystem is largely ecosystem that you need to understand the leaders. You create a leaders which can understand these nuances and these complexities and this kind of larger, bigger context as well as the small nuances involved in this one basically. We need to have a lot of collaborations and information sharing between within the organization, across the sector, within the different sectors basically at a national level, international level as well. We need a lot of this effort to innovation and research in cybersecurity so that we identify the problem and try to find solutions for that basically. We need to create a market for those new innovations basically, right? And then we need to create an entire innovation ecosystem which can really think about what can we do to solve, look at that use case, and that use case is solved in a very technical manner so that it can help us to recover or manage the things in very real-time basis basically. So this is one layer. Other layer which is we are deliberating since morning, probably I heard something on, is for that to happen, the national strategy for the security needs to be devised in a way basically, right? So national strategy needs to be put in a place for that. We had been talking about India's national cybersecurity strategy for last 2 years. We have been deliberating that, but that strategy should look at these kind of challenges that we are facing at the ground level basically. We are talking about how is the policy and regulation basically that we need to devise for this basically, right? So strategy is one part, but you need to have a lot of definitely you solve it, but if something goes wrong, how quickly you are, and that's what you have been deliberating since morning, how you can make a law enforcement bodies equipped enough to solve this problem basically. Also the justice ecosystem also equipped enough to solve these problems basically. And then this particular part is so interdependent and a lot of interventions are required from the government side. So government affairs matters a lot in the cyberspace that we see as of now basically. And then how we make sure that we have the skill and education so that we understand this complexity, diversity, requirement of the challenges and solve that problem so that we have the people to work to solve this kind of challenge we are into basically. So this is an overall larger framework that I just wanted to discuss with Yuki, where exactly we had been seeing the history of a security, where exactly is reached in terms of real-time management challenge. But from now, it's largely the ecosystem coming together to work to solve the problem in a more scalable way. That will only happen basically we all work together. A lot of these pieces like a law enforcement, judiciary, prosecutor on one hand basically, then the security manager on the other hand, the national strategy on the other hand, the policymakers, line ministries, the regulators basically, the CISO leadership, the CIO leadership, business leadership, all them needs to be coming together to solve this problem in a more scalable way and more practical way and efficient way. So that's what the basically that we believe the business of a security or for example security for businesses would be determining in the coming future basically. With these 2 3 slides I would like to conclude and probably that panel will take it ahead from here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an informative and engaging speech. I would like to request Hyderabad City Police Commissioner, Chairman HCSC, Shri C.V. Anand, sir, to please come onto the stage to felicitate Shri Vinayak Godse, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We now move on to the panel discussion of this session, which will be on the topic of current cyber security scenario in India and the panelists' perspective on the current state of cyber security in Hyderabad. I would like to invite our moderator for this session, Shri Santosh Kaveti, Joint Secretary HCSC, to please come onto the stage, invite the panelists, introduce them and take this forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vinayak Godse. That was a really a good tone for us to get into this panel discussion here. I would like to invite our trailblazing panelists who are pushing boundaries and setting trends at the forefront of digital safety. I'll start with introducing Mrs. Sylaja Vadlamudi, and I'll invite her to come onto the stage, please. She's trailblazing VP of Security and Data Privacy at SAP. She's the founder of VCSP, Women in Cybersecurity and Privacy, and she's a top 10 women tech leader in India. And she actually uses technologies like AI and blockchain to raise awareness and protect vulnerable groups online. I would like to then invite Mr. Krishna Sas Pendyala Garu. Please come on to the stage, please. Mr. Shastri is a partner at E&Y. He's made groundbreaking strides when it comes to forensics. And he worked with Interpol of 22 countries and was actually awarded the youngest forensic scientist by the Union Home Minister. I would like to invite Mr. Bala Prasad Pedigari. He's the Chief Innovation Officer at TCS. He, of course, uses AI and emerging technologies and applies that to security. Thank you for having me. I would like to invite Mr. Praveen Kumar Tengalagaru. Please come on over to the stage. He's the Associate Director at Alliant Group, and he also has an interesting way to spread the awareness. He's got a program with Fever 94.3 radio channel to spread the awareness. So he's a brand of his own in terms of spreading the awareness. So with that, I think Mr. Godse gave us a really good presentation on enterprise security and the changing landscape of the enterprise security. Right? Now, that leads to one really good question for us. When you look at the market size and look at distribute the organizations into their size by revenues or employee size. Obviously, big companies can somehow afford, they have resources. I know there is a lot to do for big companies as well, but how about SMBs? What do they need to do? They don't have the same resources. They don't have the know-how. They don't have the money. And of course, there's a myth that protecting cybersecurity is going to cost you a lot of money. So how do we deal with that? With that, I would like to ask Mr. Shastri you a question, or at least a set of questions. So what are the 5 key cybersecurity risks for SMBs? And why SMBs are vulnerable, particularly now, post-pandemic? And what are the best practices for SMBs?
Very good afternoon to everyone, and thank Mr. Kaveti for inviting me to take this particular session and as a part of the moderation. As you rightly mentioned about it, even the cybersecurity domain, we would like to break it into 2 categories, pre-COVID as well as the post-COVID scenario. So let me tell you what is the real threat landscape currently available. Working in this domain for approximately 3 decades. The first and the foremost, if you look at, is for every 1 second, one cyber attack is currently happening. And for every 11 seconds, one ransomware attack is the current scenario. And approximately 9 lakhs of new viruses are coming and hitting the market. So this is the current threatscape as far as the cyber security and the cyber attack is concerned. And out of the 9 lakhs malwares that are really coming and hitting the market, at least 2% of the malwares whose signature is not known to any of the existing antivirus vendors. That's where the existing threat intelligence groups are really facing the problem. And let us come to the small and the medium business units, which we call as SMBs. If you look at the case of SMBs, before COVID period, approximately the number of organizations which reported that there have been breached is 53%, as per the Cisco reports and some of the industry reports. But post-COVID, due to work from home, or maybe due to, some unemployment, and due to moonlighting and all these issues, the number of cyber security breaches has gone up to 68%. So 68% of the small and the medium enterprises are really getting impacted with the cyber security breaches is the current trend that is happening. Out of the various breaches that has been reported, what are the 5 top-notch cyber security risks the small and medium enterprises are facing? The first and the foremost is something called identity theft and the data breaches. The data breaches in most of the cases, if you look at the small and the medium enterprises, insiders are the one who are responsible for that. So insider threat is one of the biggest, remember, first and the foremost for the small and medium enterprises. The second is, as rightly mentioned about Vinayak God said, the biggest problem today, let it be small, medium to top organizations are facing is something called ransomware attacks. And third most important we are seeing is something called distributed denial of service attacks, where a huge traffic will come and hit the servers of that organization. And especially from the last 2-3 months, we are seeing it has become a geopolitical issue. At the same time, it has become a something called the religious issue, and a politically motivated attacks are happening. I don't know how many of you read it. From the last 4-5 days, lot of Indian organizations, let it be small, medium to top organizations, are experiencing a distributed denial of service attacks from a group called Anonymous Sudan. A huge traffic is coming and hitting them and making the servers are down. So starting from banking sectors to pharma sectors to hospitality sectors to everyone is getting a victim of this particular attack. And fourth, if you look at it's a very surprising statistics to many of you. 67 to 70% of the small and medium enterprises organizations' computer systems are used by the hackers for the crypto mining. So if you look at, remember, we popularly call it the crypto jockeying. 70% of the organization's computer systems are used by the hackers for mining a Bitcoin, and organizations is not even aware about it. Their systems are used by some hackers for the purpose of mining the Bitcoin. And the fifth, especially for the small and medium enterprises, something called business email compromises, resulting to something called invoice fraud. That's where a fake invoices are getting, and the companies are not aware this is a fake invoice, and the money is getting paid to a wrong bank accounts. So in summary, I can say it, insider threats of data breaches, ransomware attacks, then distributed denial of service attacks, using as a bot as well as the crypto mining, and last but not the least, if you look at is something called business email compromise are the 5 major risks, remember, the small and the medium enterprise are facing. So now let us come for the second part of the question, why they are vulnerable for this. The reason why they are vulnerable, if you look at is, the first and the foremost, if you look at for all these companies, for them, cybersecurity expenditure is something called as a cost center. Please remember today, spending money on cybersecurity is not a cost center, it's a business enabler. That's a point they should realize this point. They're not, what they look at a pharma company, their main use of remember computer systems is only as a supply chain or the logistics. They never think about, remember, spending some amount of money on cybersecurity. First and the foremost is the top management should have a cybersecurity strategy, policy, framework, and mindset to implement at least 5 to 8% of the IT budget for the cybersecurity. That's the first important point. Second is, there's nothing called as a cybersecurity culture in the organizations. People can come, insert a pen drive, take out the data. Their operating systems are highly vulnerable. I've seen a lot of companies, still they are using a legacy operating system of Windows XP. They never spend the money on updating their existing, remember, operating systems. They never spend the money on, remember, doing something called vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, putting the patches, regularly putting an antivirus. Almost I've seen a lot of companies where people are putting something as antivirus is a free and the pirated versions. So having not, remember, something as a cyber hygiene, no culture in the organization, nothing called data leakage prevention policies, operating systems are legacies, no antiviruses, no patch management. These are all the main reasons, remember, why the small and the medium enterprise are getting impacted with this particular cyber attacks. So what the organizations need to know it, the first and the foremost is, unfortunately for small and the medium enterprise, we don't have anything called as a regulator. Please remember, for a banks, you got a Reserve Bank of India. For listed companies, we got SEBIs. But for a small and medium, there is no regulator. As long as, remember, the regulator was not there, I'm pretty sure about it. This is my statement, they are not going to spend any money. So who is the regulator for them? For them, the regulator is nothing but the police. Because we got an excellent section 43 of the Indian Information Technology Act, which says very clearly, Anybody who receives the data, process the data, transmit the data should take reasonable security practices. Otherwise, they are liable for prosecution with an imprisonment or a fine or a both. Now, that's where the police can take the action. Once a data has been given to a particular company, if a breach happens, it is responsible to the company to protect the data which are given to that company. Currently, that is missing. So, regulator has to play a very, very important role. Then only these organizations are going to spend the money. Bringing a cybersecurity culture, bringing a cybersecurity hygiene in the organization, creating a cybersecurity policy framework for all these organizations is one of the biggest tasks we are having it. That's where organizations are supposed to what? Spend a good amount of money and the resources. Then only you can make the small and medium enterprise to be what? Cyber secure.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Shastri. You touched on culture. It starts with organizational culture. So I'd like to ask Sylaja, how do you build that culture in an organization? How do you build that resiliency in the organization, especially when they are SMBs? And also, now everybody is on cloud. Even businesses are on cloud. If you have a phone and if you have an email on your phone, you're on cloud. Whether you know it or not, you're on cloud. And how do they become cloud ready from security perspective? Can you please let me know?
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's an honor to be, on the esteemed panelist over here. And Hyderabad is the place, I always say it's a city with million dreams, and I am one of them who started my career from here. And whatever I am here, whatever I am today is also, something that Hyderabad has given to me. Yeah. And coming to your question, Shastri Garu has really outlined the perspective from the SMEs. He has covered everything in a nice narrative. So I want to talk about the culture, the organization culture, right? As part of my current role, I am heading security topic for all the development locations across the globe. We are in 1 lakh organizations spread across so many continents and countries. So as part of my role as head of the application security lead, what I do is, the primary utmost important factor that we have to consider is the human. Because when it comes to larger organizations, they have enough budgets, they have spends and all that. We buy so many tools, we bring a lot of process into place. Sometimes we over-process things. That is all part of the day-to-day job that we do. But the most important factor is the people aspect of it, the human aspects of it. If humans are not aware, if people are not trained enough to use a specific technology, or for example, to the matter of bringing a pen drive and inserting into a secure ecosystem of your company, how much loss it is going to be, right? And now every company is also realizing the fact we can invest so much on tools and technology and process, but the utmost important aspect is investing onto your workforce, enabling them, empowering them. And when it talks about resilience, right, we all have heard this term enough and we have witnessed it enough during the pandemic. The resilient organizations were able to stand stronger and stand bolder. Of course, there are so many hiccups for sure, but one of my observation is when organizations started investing in their own people, the kind of open culture. When something goes wrong, generally we develop a lot of products and we offer a lot of services. And every time we are in a very tight time schedules or very tight time crunches. So not letting compromising security, because yes, you have a customer waiting for your product to be out and your revenues are directly dependent on that. And sometimes even your quarterly results are depending on that. But having all of that in the midst of it, being the security owner, being the person over there, or being a developer inside the organization, being a key stakeholder in the entire ecosystem, right? How can you stand and say this is still important? Yeah, because now people are also understanding the fact, like we have seen enough, the history has taught us enough. One simple ransomware or one simple cyber security or data breach is putting your entire stake, even the share market is falling off. The company cease to exist. So in this scenario, when people understand the value of